सिराज
सिराज तो नहीं है यार, सिराज भाई खाना खा रहे
सॉरी सूर्या, ओवर द इयर्स आप टीम के साथ जो आपका रोल चेंज हुआ है, उस ट्रांजिशन के बारे में अगर आपने बताया कि जब आप ड्रेसिंग रूम में आए थे यंगस्टर और आज आप जहाँ खड़े हैं, स्पेशली जब एक बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट टाइम टूर्नामेंट का शुरू हो रहा है, तो वहाँ पे आप जब व्हेन यू लुक बैक अपने करियर को और जहाँ आप टीम में जो आपका रोल है, आप अगर आप बता सकें कि हाउ इट हैज़ चेंज ओवर द इयर्स और आज टीम कितना आपके ऊपर इस चीज़ के लिए रिलाई करती है।
पाजी एज अ यंगस्टर तो नहीं आया था बट हाँ, मैं इतना डोमेस्टिक क्रिकेट और फर्स्ट क्लास क्रिकेट खेला हुआ था, आईपीएल का सीजन्स खेला हुआ था, तो मुझे पता था व्हेन आई वॉक इनटू दैट ड्रेसिंग रूम क्या एक्सपेक्टेड होगा मेरे से, व्हाई आई एम पिक्ड किसी के जगह पे, एंड आई वाज वेरी क्लियर इन माय माइंड कि मुझे कैसे खेलना है। वो नंबर पे अगर 4 नंबर पे अगर मुझे खेलना है वैसे, तो मुझे कैसे खेलना है, कैसे खेला है लोगों ने। और मैं कभी भी यही सोचता हूँ, जो T20 का सबसे डिफ़िकल्ट फेज़ होता है, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल 7-14, 7-16, जहाँ पे टीम्स ट्राई करते हैं गेम कंट्रोल करने के लिए, तो वो चीज़ के बारे में मैंने बहुत सोचा था पहले, बिफोर मेकिंग माय डेब्यू फॉर इंडिया, कि यहाँ पे अगर मैं अच्छा करता हूँ, यहाँ पे अगर मैं अच्छी स्ट्राइक रेट से बैटिंग करता हूँ, तो मैं एक गेम चेंजर बन सकता हूँ वो दिन में। एंड व्हेन आई केप्ट डूइंग इट रिपीटेडली, तो मुझे ऐसा लगा कि आई थिंक यही है मेरा गेम प्लान गोइंग फॉरवर्ड। क्योंकि पावर प्ले में आगे बैटिंग तो यू नो द प्लेयर्स आर इनसाइड, आप अच्छे क्रिकेटिंग शॉट्स खेल के बाउंड्री मार सकते हो, बट इन बिटवीन 7-15 कहाँ आप बाउंड्री मार सकते हो, 6 देख सकते हो, वेयर कैन यू स्टेप अप एंड टेक द टीम अहेड एट दैट टाइम, सो दैट इट गेट्स ईजियर एट द डेथ साइड ऑफ इट। बट ये इस बारे में मैंने बहुत सोचा और इसके ऊपर मैंने बहुत प्रैक्टिस भी की है, मैच सिमुलेशंस किए हैं बहुत सारे। तो अब जब मैं मैच में बैटिंग करने को जाता हूँ, आई नो द सिचुएशंस, तो उसके हिसाब से मैं ट्राई करता हूँ कि अगेन वो दिन मैं कैसे गेम चेंजर हो सकता हूँ टीम के लिए, एंड आई जस्ट ट्राई एंड डू दैट। हो गया तो ठीक है, नहीं हुआ कोई बात नहीं, नेक्स्ट गेम फिर से ट्राई करेंगे।
नमस्कार
दादा
एक ही रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी की सब लोग सोच रहे हैं कि बैटिंग बैटिंग बैटिंग, लेकिन स्लिप में भी तो आप खड़े हो, बॉल चक करके निकल नहीं रहा है, डाई डाउन हो रहा है, कैच पकड़ने के बाद आपके चेहरे पे वो किसी नज़र आई इम्पोर्टेंट कैच पाकिस्तान मैच में जो 50 के बाद भी नज़र आई। फील्डिंग के बारे में, वो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी के बारे में भी कुछ बोलो यार।
वो एक्चुअली सर मुझे ऐसा लगता है फील्डिंग एक पार्ट है जो नॉन नेगोशिएबल है। तो उसके ऊपर बहुत मेहनत की है सब लोग ने, देख के लग रहा है सब लोग ने अच्छी मेहनत की है। और ये जो गेम्स होते हैं, जो क्लोज टाइट गेम्स होते हैं, उसमें जो हाफ चांसेस होते हैं वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होते हैं, क्योंकि वही लास्ट में गेम का फैसला कर देते हैं। तो उस चीज़ के बारे में हमने अच्छे से सोचा हुआ है, सब लोग अपना अपना टाइम से आके फील्डिंग कोच के साथ टाइम स्पेंड करते हैं। और फील्डिंग में जब आप वो 2 रन रुकाते हो, 4 रन रुकाते हो, एक अच्छा कैच लेते हो, तो एक पॉजिटिविटी स्प्रेड हो जाती है टीम में। सो बैटिंग करते हो तो होती ही है, अंदर सबको अच्छा लगता है, बट जब फील्डिंग करते हो आप और ऐसा कुछ कैच लेते हो या एक अच्छा रन आउट मारते हो या रन रुकाते हो, तो वो पूरे 9 लोग में स्प्रेड होती है, 9-10 लोग में। तो एक वो चीज़ है जो हम लोग ने इस बार थोड़ा ज़्यादा सीरियसली ले लिया है और अच्छा लग रहा है देख के।
सूर्या, जब हम विराट और रोहित दोनों ओपन करते हैं और अगर बाय चांस वो दोनों जल्दी आउट हो जाते हैं, तो क्या जब आप मिडिल ऑर्डर में खेलते हैं या ऋषभ के साथ खेलते हैं, तो क्या वो खेलने का तरीका बदल जाता है क्योंकि 2 आपके बड़े बल्लेबाज जो एक्सपीरियंस बल्लेबाज हैं वो आउट हो जाते हैं, या फिर उनमें से कोई एक खेलता है? क्योंकि अभी तक विराट नंबर 3 तक खेलते थे तो एक डेप्थ एक्स्ट्रा मिल जाता था आपको, अपने शॉट्स खेलने का और ज़्यादा मौका मिल जाता था। ये दोनों जब बल्लेबाज ओपन कर जाते हैं और विकेट जल्दी गिर जाता है, जैसा अभी तक होता आ रहा है, क्या खेलने में आपके शॉट्स जाते हुए आपके जहन में या आपके डिमांड्स जो टीम मैनेजमेंट आपको कहती है, क्या उसमें कुछ बदलाव हुआ है?
ऐसे तो कुछ हुआ नहीं है, क्योंकि फॉर्मेट है, हम लोग ट्राई करते हैं इसको फॉर्मेट, उस फॉर्मेट को ही खेलने, वैसे ही खेलने के लिए। और आउट अगर 2 हो गए, 3 हो गए, एट द एंड ऑफ द डे आपको, अगर आप पहली बैटिंग कर रहे हो तो रन्स तो डालने ही है स्कोर बोर्ड पे, तो इंटेंट आपका चेंज नहीं होता है। तो हम लोग दोनों वही ट्राई करते हैं कि सेम इंटेंट से बैटिंग करें, और बोलते रहते हैं एक दूसरे को कि पॉजिटिव रूट लेंगे तो ज़्यादा बेटर होगा, रादर देन हैविंग अ डबल थॉट। और अंदर जो 2 लोग बैटिंग कर रहे हैं, मैनेजमेंट ने भी यही बोला है, कैप्टन ने भी यही बोला है कि वो दोनों लोग बेस्ट हैं जो डिसीजन ले सकते हैं टीम्स पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से, कि क्या इंपॉर्टेंट है वो टाइम पे। तो वो हम लोग सोचते हैं और फिर उसी हिसाब से एक्ट करते हैं।
सूर्य भाई, आपने यहाँ वनडे सीरीज भी खेली है, तो पिच लगता है कि आपको यहाँ ज़्यादा टर्न होगी। और दूसरा सवाल ये है कि अब थकाने वाला टूर है, क्योंकि एक एक या 2-2 दिन नहीं रुकना है एक एक शहर में, तो ये कितना माइंड पे स्ट्रेस डालेगा आप लोगों के?
मेरे हिसाब से बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है कि आप खुद के बॉडी पे कैसे ध्यान देते हो, क्योंकि वहाँ पे हमें टाइम मिला, अभी सुपर 8 में इतना टाइम नहीं है. सो यू प्ले अ गेम, यू ट्रैवल अगेन अगले दिन, तो रिकवरी पे थोड़ा ज़्यादा फोकस करना पड़ेगा. प्रैक्टिस सेशंस इतने मिलेंगे नहीं, जो भी है यहाँ पे ही था, मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है लास्ट. और सब अभी प्रोफेशनल वर्ल्ड है, इतना तो सब लोग ध्यान देते ही हैं अपने अपने इस पे, कैसे रिकवरी करना है, कैसे सोना है. एंड हम लोग ज़्यादा एक्चुअली सुबह के T20 खेलते नहीं है. डे लाइट में वी आर यूज टू प्लेइंग नाइट इन द नाइट, और डे गेम्स मुश्किल से 3-4 होता है, तो उसमें आपको ध्यान देना बहुत ज़रूरी है खुद का. वो बस 3 घंटा थोड़ा पुश करके फिर तो 1.5 दिन का आराम मिलेगा ही. फिर क्या चीज़, वो तो थोड़ा डिफरेंट दिख रही थी उस टाइम पे, इस टाइम इट्स लुकिंग अ लिटिल डिफरेंट. तो देखते हैं, अभी 20 तारीख के बाद देखते हैं क्या होता है.
Hi, Surya. Afghanistan has done giant killing in this T20 tournament. Defeated New Zealand also. Your next match is against them, first match of the Super 8. How do you guys plan up? How you guys planning to shape up your match?
We do obviously have plans against Afghanistan, but we are completely focused and have our strong points really well. We're working on that, and I mean, we do think about the opposition, but yeah, at the same time, at the end of the day, you should know what your strong points are and back it.
Hi Surya.
Hello.
You hit a 49 ball half century in New York and it was not like you at all. Can you take us through what was going on in your mind and how did you manage that kind of grit while you had to limit your stroke plays?
When we thought about it, I knew post power play finding boundaries is going to be difficult on that ground with the wind, with the slow outfield. So we had a plan in mind after power play that just try and hit the gap, run hard, and it was it was a little difficult track to bat on, yes, but at that day the situation was different. We had to be batting till the end, keeping the wickets in hand. So that's what was running in my mind. The same thing, I spoke to Shivam as well. We were just away from 1 or 2 hits, and yeah, we got the game that way.
Surya, just an extension of one of the previous questions regarding gameplay against spin. With Afghanistan and Bangladesh being there on your group, you expect a lot of spinners to, as face. So just wanted to know that you were, as a batter, personally, you are trying to play more cross-batted short sweeps, reverse sweeps, or maybe acclimatize according to the situation of the game.
That has always been my strong point. I mean, if the wicket is slow, spinner is bowling, or if the wicket is good, that has always been my game. I've tried to play the same way what I do in the practice sessions, and I mean, yeah, everyone has a different game plan. Looking at the wickets against the spinners, all have different mindsets. But yeah, when they come together and bring the skill set, I think it'll be good and it's nice.
सूर्या, पिछले 2 साल से आप नंबर 1 बैट्समैन रहे हैं T20 फॉर्मेट में. इस बार बहुत ज़्यादा एक्सपेक्टेशन है एज ए यू बीइंग द प्रीमियर बैट्समैन ऑफ दिस इंडियन T20 साइड. किस तरह से देखते हैं, मतलब अपने रोल को यहाँ पर विकेट जिस तरह से चैलेंजिंग है, अपने आपको पर्सनली गेम बदलना पड़ा है, उसके बारे में बताएं.
आई मीन, जैसे आपने बोला कि 2 साल से वर्ल्ड नंबर 1 बैट्समैन हो, तो आपको डिफरेंट कंडीशंस के हिसाब से बैटिंग करने आना चाहिए, और अपने गेम को कैसे आप चेंज कर सकते हो, उस टाइम पे टीम को क्या नीड है, अगर वैसे आप खेल सकते हो तो आई थिंक वो एक अच्छा बैट्समैनशिप डिस्प्ले करता है, और वही मैं ट्राई करता हूँ. अगर विकेट थोड़ा डिफिकल्ट है और अपॉर्चुनिटी नहीं है वहाँ पे जैसे मैं पहले बैटिंग करते आ रहा था, तो आई ट्राई टू चेंज इट.
Surya, full range of shots were not possible in US, at least New York में. So are you happy coming here, and what do you think of the pitch here?
I was happy playing there as well. It's not that we weren't happy playing there, but we were playing for the first time, so yes, the conditions were different and little challenging as well. But we've played here, we know the conditions here, how they react, how they act. So yeah, very happy to be here.
What are the conditions?
Here or there? Here or there? Here it was covered. I trained when I went onto the field while fielding, but yeah, it looks better.
The same question I had, because yesterday we had a look at the wicket. It was very brownish, which is rare to have here in Barbados. Are you surprised?
Not really. I mean, last time also when we were here for ODIs, it was a similar kind of wicket. But I don't think there has been a lot of cricket played here in the last 10-15 days. We said the practice wickets were also good, so we are expecting that the game wicket will also be much better.
I was just an extension of that question. Have you noticed a difference in terms of the practice pitches that you got in the US and here? And if you have, are you relieved that the practice pitches probably may have improved while here?
Practice pitches, yeah, they were a little spicy there. It was fresh. They made the conditions post. I mean, after they got to know that there's a World Cup over there, and here they have been making pitches regularly. So, but yeah, there the practice wicket here were much better from what we did in USA. It was a little spicy, but yeah, much better.
Good afternoon, Surya. When the ball is not coming onto the bat as readily as it typically does in T20 cricket, when you have to generate the power, especially when you're playing these ramp shots and trying to scoop and you don't have enough pace on the ball, how do you sort of adapt to that situation?
Hit the gap and run hard. I mean, as I said, it's difficult to generate that force when there's no pace on the wicket and when someone has read your game nicely. So at that time, you have to be very smart how you want to extend your innings. If you can't bat the way you have been batting in the last 1 year or 2 years, you have to change according to the situation, what team demands at that moment, and talk to your partner who's inside, calm your nerves down, and then take the innings ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Well, you, of course, as a player, you've played here. Not the best memories of the '97 Test, I'm sure.
Jeez, thanks a lot, buddy. That's some other decent memories also in life.
Good. Well, so yeah, that is actually my question. So a chance for you to probably make new and much better memories tomorrow.
God, man, I'm not trying to make new anything, man. I move on from things very quickly. I think that's one of my things. I don't look back on things. Try and do what I'm doing now at the moment. I'm not, I'm not concerned about what happened in '97 or some other year, and whether by winning this, that yeah, if you had told me that by winning this you would ensure that instead of scoring whatever we scored 80, we would make it 121, then I would be bothered. But even if we win this match tomorrow, unfortunately, that is still going to remain 80 on the scorecard. However much I might try and will it. So no, I do not think about any retribution or thinking back and looking at it. It's not. I move on from things. What's in front of me? What's here? Good or bad? It's not a. I think it's one of the things I don't think of myself too much as a player anymore. And yeah, it's just move on. Focus on tomorrow. Try and get a good result tomorrow. Prepare the team as best as we can.
राहुल, आउटफील्ड डायमेंशन के बारे में आप क्या कहोगे यहाँ के, क्योंकि मायने रखता है T20 क्रिकेट में, क्योंकि थोड़ा सा स्लोप भी है, मच बेटर आउटफील्ड कंपेयर टू न्यूयॉर्क. आप कैसे देखते हो इसको?
Yeah, I think again that's a factor you will consider. Just like I answered the earlier question, sometimes you consider tactical things. Obviously, well, dew may not be a factor. Maybe the wind could be a factor in this place. The wind blows quite strongly from one side to the other. Like you said, the boundary sizes might be smaller on one side, bigger on one side. There's a bit of a slope. Could probably be a quicker outfield than what we experienced in New York. So again, we'll have to adjust. We'll have to adapt. We've discussed these things. To be very honest, we've had some really fruitful meetings over the last couple of days, both as a leadership group and even with the players. Quite a few individual chats as well. Team chats. So a lot of these points have come up, and there's a lot of intelligence in the group. It's not just us as coaches talking to the players, but so many of these players have played so many games. They have a lot of experience. In fact, in our squad, we think we have 7 or 8 guys who captain teams regularly. So there's a lot of intelligence, a lot of conversations, a lot of ideas that do come out and, become part of the discussion. So really been happy with some of the chats we've been having over the last few days, and really hope we can now execute, some of the things. And that's the most important thing, is the ability to execute. Ideas are good. I think we've got really good ideas, good plans, but you need to be able to execute them for them to look good as well.
Rahul sir, just wanted to know that on those drop-in pitches in New York, we had 8 batsmen in our batting lineup. But considering the conditions over here and some of the teams who has played all the matches over here, some wrist spinners are doing really well, like Adam Zampa, Adil Rashid. So does that come into the scheme of things as well, going into the Super 8 stage?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've built our squad believing that anyone in the 15 can come into the side and play. A lot of thought has gone into the squad, keeping all kinds of conditions in mind. We're lucky that we've got a few all-rounders in the mix that allow us to be able to do that. So like you rightly said, even though in New York we had 8 batting options, we also had 7 bowling options. So we had both sides covered to a large extent. Yes, of course, the wrist spinners, we do understand, play a big role. We've got 2 really quality wrist spinners. So certainly I'm sure that, they will come into this tournament sooner rather than later.
Taking that forward, coach, how difficult was it to leave Kuldeep out of the playing 11, because he's been probably India's best spinner across formats, and we saw a turn in the practice pitches. So your thoughts on the pitches as well, and how big a role is he going to play in the Super 8s?
Like I said, it's tough to leave anyone out. I mean, all the 4 guys that we left out in those games, to be honest, are all quality players, quality performers. Any one of them actually coming into your squad, if you were to look at it man for man, will not make your squad a weaker squad. It's just that the conditions and what we felt was the requirement in that particular venue made us go with that particular combination, where we felt that there wasn't a huge role for spin and it was more a pace bowlers kind of conditions. And we also wanted to ensure that we had the depth on those tricky kind of wickets if and when required. So that's what we went there with. Here it might be different. Obviously, without giving too much away, certainly, it might be slightly different here. We might feel the need that we might need an extra spinner, and then certainly, someone like Kuldeep or Yuzi with their quality and their skill do come into play and do become really big factors for us. And that is the thinking in why they have been selected, because we knew that conditions could be potentially different in each of the different islands or each of the different countries.
Well, playing in a country where cricket is held regularly, unlike in America, and taking on Afghanistan, which has a not caring attitude. How do you see this match?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, it was good to play in New York. I thought, all the 3 games that we played were really well attended, which is fantastic. But it's also now lovely to come to the Caribbean, come to Barbados, to come to this ground which has a great history and a great tradition of cricket in this country and in this region. Is fantastic as well, and we're really looking forward to it. We've had a couple of days of really good practice. We feel we're ready. We feel we're rested. We feel we're prepared. And we know Afghanistan is a very dangerous team in this format of the game. They've shown in their performances in this World Cup. But also, I think if you just look at their squad, I mean, they might not have a lot of international experience as in the other formats of the game, but a lot of their players do play in a lot of T20 leagues, more than, in fact, some of our players do. But they are, sort of well-travelled cricketers, especially in the T20 circuit, T20 league, a lot of them. Very prominent members of their IPL teams, other teams as well. So certainly in this format, they're not a team to be taken lightly. They're deservedly in the Super 8s. And we will not treat them any differently as we would treat any other team that we expect to play in the Super 8s. They have a good spinner, good attack, good bowling attack all around. I think even their 2 pacers are quite experienced, whether it's Farooqi and Naveen ul Haq. They both played a lot of cricket. They both swing the ball as well. So got a pretty good bowling attack. There's no doubt about it. I think their bowlers are some of the most sought after bowlers in this format across the world in different leagues. We understand that is going to pose a challenge to us, and we are going to have to play well and counter that. And we've got the skills, and we've tried to create the balance and the depth in the squad that allows us to counter their bowling attack. Not only spinners, their fast bowlers as well. Counter their bowling attack. That hopefully we can get a par plus score or chase down whatever score that they set for us.
Rahul, in India and Indian team generally used to playing white ball cricket under lights. So in all games now onwards, even in New York, where will we are in the day. So new factor kept aside, that is eliminated anyway. What were the challenges for the Indian team to play in the daytime white ball?
Like you said, it's slightly different for this generation of cricketers. They don't play a lot of games at 10:30. But look, I don't think it's it's too much of a hassle. Once you get used to it, once you get your mind around it, as we have, there's some obviously factors that, like you said rightly, the dew will not be a factor. So not something that we would consider at for a 10:30 game. But then there are other things which you might consider, like the slowness of the pitch or other factors that you would consider when it is a day game. So there are certain, I'd say, tactical things that might be slightly different. But other than that, to be honest, it's I think it doesn't really make too much of a difference. The guys are used to it now. I think there'll be great crowds even for this game, whether it's at 10:30 or whether it's at 8 o'clock. I expect most India games to have very good crowds. So I think from that perspective, I don't really think it makes too much of a difference.
Rahul, you spoke about a flexible batting order, something that Rohit also alluded to, saying that the openers will be static and the rest will change depending on the situation. Is it something that is specific to a T20 perspective, or do you see this happening across formats going forward? Not just for India, I'm just saying in a larger perspective.
I just think each situation is unique. I think each situation is unique. It's hard to keep something set in stone. At least that's my belief. I always do believe in being flexible in your thinking, being able to adapt to situations. What does your team require? What do the conditions require? I think it's something that we've always been conscious of, the concept of being able to have players who can be adaptable and float in that middle order if and when required. And it's something that we've continuously striven to do as and when required and as and when possible, not just for the sake of it. A lot of times you make these changes, keeping something specific in mind, keeping something, it works sometimes, it doesn't work sometimes, and that's not, I think you can't judge everything only on the results. You always have to go behind and see what is the thinking behind some of these things. So yeah, various situations will demand. I mean, the Pakistan game, we moved Aksar up the order. There was a specific thinking around it. There are other situations we've moved Rishabh a little bit up the order in this thing. So there's been a little bit of thinking around that. So yeah, there's a lot of thought that goes into some of these things, and we do think about it. But again, I mean, I don't think the test format will have too many flexibilities. One day cricket, again, we are seeing that depending. But I think in the T20 format, especially with the matchups, with the dimensions of ground, with the kind of conditions, you do see it happening quite a lot more in the T20 format, where I guess every over or every 10 balls is actually quite critical and matters much more than probably it does in another format. So I think most teams, I think, are trying to make use of that, trying to make use of matchups, trying to make use of the best use of their resources to try and maximize the 120 balls that they can.
Rahul, one of the impetuses for you as a leadership was to become more proactive when batting, and being okay with taking risks. Whereas when you came here for the World Cup, you were presented with completely different conditions to which you all adjusted very well. But again, it was 3 matches at the same venue. Now you're coming into the business end and you're getting a new venue every time, and especially if you're put in, and if you go 3-4 overs, even if you go 3-4 overs without really assessing the conditions really well, that can cost you the game. So how do you go about, what are the best practices you put in to go about mitigating that kind of a misstep?
So like you rightly said, a lot of the impetus over the last few years, and I think we've done it in most parts, has actually been to be able to push the needle forward. I mean, if you look at a lot of our stats and our numbers, and we look at these things quite a lot, is we have pushed the needle forward in terms of our batting. There's no question about it. Sometimes in certain conditions, you've just got to be mindful of conditions also. I think sometimes we just get carried away in T20 cricket and just talking about pushing the needle forward. But then, it's also, cricket is a very condition specific game. It's one of the only sports left where the surface makes such an impact on the actual skill levels, the actual performance levels. What is an acceptable performance level? It's the one sport that we play where the surface makes a huge difference, and it has to be brought into consideration at all times. And I think we saw that in the US and we saw that in New York. That had to be brought into consideration, not only for us but for other teams as well. I think everyone had to do that. Actually, even in Australia, at sometimes, there were times in that where you had to bring that into consideration. Not every wicket is Hyderabad, or not every wicket can be the same. And I think that's something we pride ourselves in as well. I think we are trying to also get that ability to be smart in our decision making, to try and assess situations cleverly. We feel we've got the experience and the nous, and also the ability to counteract different situations that may present themselves. And then, of course, we are looking at things at the past games that have been played here. What have been the scores? What's the level of swing that people are experiencing? Amount of turn they're getting? What's the bounce? So you look at all of these factors and you come up with some basic ideas as what you might think is a thing. But again, I think, you've got to keep an open mind. I think that's an important thing. You might have all the stats, you might have all the data, but on the day, sometimes conditions can be very different to what you think it is. Just because a particular ground has produced certain number of runs in the past, or even in 10 days prior, it can be very different because the preparation of a wicket, how the weather, so much can change. Even in the 2 or 3 days leading into a particular game, a lot can change that can force you to sometimes recalibrate and rethink. So I think we'll have to do that. We'll have to be quick and smart and be able to do that and assess the conditions. And I hope we'll do that. If we want to succeed in this tournament, like you rightly said, teams are going to play in different venues. All teams are going to have to be quick in adapting and assessing those situations.
Thank you. Thanks.
Jonathan, yeah. Your spinners bowl well against most of the teams, but India teams have always seen an opening through spin to shut down India's scoring rate. So do you see spin as your spinners as an advantage that gives you maybe a leg up against them? And also the conditions of the pitch, is it likely to help your spinners?
I can't give you that information about the pitch. I'm sure that's against ICC regulations. But I think when you've got the spinners with the experience of T20 cricket, like we have, I think you would obviously say that's one of our strengths. But yet one of our seamers is a leading wicket take in the tournament. So I think we've seen certainly over the last couple of years a more rounded side with regards to ball and on conditions. So if it swings and seams, we can take wickets. If it spins, hopefully we can take wickets as well. You would say so, because it eliminates the dew factor, doesn't it? So if it's going to spin, it would probably help us. If it doesn't spin, we've got to bowl well as spinners. Spinners can't just rely on spin to be able to take wickets and create pressure. So that goes for both sides, I'm sure. And India have got some good spinners themselves, so it's going to be a good contest.
Unbeaten India in different conditions, and how do you approach this one, especially a challenging situation? How do you look at it?
Well, I think like any game, you look at what the venue, obviously what's gone on here, and the matches from the group stage, and how to look at the wicket. You just treat it like a normal game. You don't. It's not with the title obviously being in the Super 8 and all that sort of stuff. You can straight away, talk the game up and to be and start looking for things that perhaps aren't there. Go out there, play a normal game, play our best game, which is something I still don't think we've done. We've still got our best game to come in us, where we put everything together, and hopefully that's tomorrow.
Jonathan, quite a few of your players play alongside and against these Indian players quite often. So how do you look at this familiarity with the team? Do you consider it as an advantage or disadvantage? And that's an extension of the previous question, that some of your spinners against India, they haven't had the kind of success which they have against other teams. So how do you see this whole thing?
Well, I think both your questions actually link there, because they would have played against each other so much or played with. So the first part, I think you see that in all nations, not just with India. I think because of IPL and franchises around the world. England and Australia have never had such a more friendly relationship ever. So for me, it's obviously very different from when I played, and that's how it is. So, and for your second question, second part, I think that works both ways. We had 9-10 players at the IPL be able to share their experience and share their knowledge of Indian players, and they'll be able to do the same of our players. So that's the current state of world cricket. I think it's in a good position, and it's very healthy. And we're in the middle of a World Cup, and we're in Barbados, so the world's pretty good.
In January, you push India to a super over. What are the things that you are taking away from that match to implement in this match in trying to win it?
What I take away from that match is we should have won it in that super over. But it also, what I take away, it shows how the gap is closing with regards to our side, the ability that our players have to be able to chase as well in T20 cricket. That was a fantastic chase in Bangalore, and unfortunately we didn't win. To have a second super over, I'm not sure that's ever happened before. So there was a lot of things to take away from that game. It would have been nice to walk away with a victory, but hopefully we're saving that for tomorrow.
Yeah, Jonathan, who do you consider to be a threat in the Indian batting order? Yes, the likes of Virat and Rohit haven't got going. So who do you reckon would be a threat in the Indian batting?
I think all of them are a threat. I think you've seen the amount of T20 cricket that the side have played, vastly experienced. And every batter, I think it'd be naive to say that they're not all a threat, but I think that goes for all of our batters as well, just as much. So anybody on their day can take the game away from you. It's our job to stop that happening with bat and ball. And I know the Indian players will respect the Afghan players as well. If they don't, then I'm okay with that as well, because we certainly feel like we get to win this game and be 1 from 1 in the Super 8. So looking forward to how tomorrow goes.
as an opposition, the fact that Virat hasn't got too many runs in this particular tournament, does that make your planning any way better, or you still going by the reputation of the batsman, the fact that he's been so consistent over the years, or by his current form in this particular tournament? Does that planning make any difference to the number of runs batsmen have scored in the opposition team?
We always look at the last couple of innings and see how they go and if there's any trends and those sorts of things when planning for opposition. So yeah, but obviously there's a history of the player as well that you take into account, and past experiences of playing against him. So everything's taken into account, not just the recent form. But yes, obviously you do notice things if there hasn't been any form, and you look to find ways where you can sort of use that information or exploit that, and hopefully continue that sort of form.
Plenty of T20 cricket experience with Afghanistan team, so nobody's taking them lightly. Do you take this as a compliment, or is it a bit of a worry?
No, I think it's a compliment, but also earned as well. I think we've had as you see in the IPL, we've got a lot of players playing a lot of T20 cricket around the world. And now it's about putting that together as a side. I think in the past we've had some good individual players, but we need all those players playing together as a side. And we've seen that at times in the group stage. So that's really exciting going into tomorrow's game. And here at a great venue like Barbados, that only sets up well. And against a side like India, that's an added bonus.
Jonathan, the tournament spread over the United States and in the Caribbean. And a lot has been talked about and said about the pitches in the US and also in the Caribbean. In terms of the science of reading pitches, being able to come up that this pitch is a 120 pitch or a 180 or a belter, in terms of your assessment as a player and a coach, what are your thoughts on the whole science of pitch reading in general? How many times are we right? How many times are we wrong?
I think pitch reading in day games is a lot easier than the evenings, depending on the dew. I think dew factor sometimes comes in and makes you second guess yourself a little bit. We certainly had that in the 50 over World Cup in India, and that's always tricky. And I know in the IPL that's also a case where people are not quite sure. Is it worth runs on the board, scoreboard pressure, or a wet ball bowling? Which do you prefer to have, or which do you prefer to play against? So those are the sorts of things. So I think a day game makes it a lot clearer and a lot easier, certainly for us as well. So as terms of pitches, I think in a World Cup you obviously want an even contest between bat and ball, and I think we've had those certainly in our first couple of games. Obviously, I can't speak about what happened in the States. I wasn't there, but close games always make exciting games, and that's what TV wants as well. So we've got to get the right balance, and hopefully we can do that the rest of the tournament.
Well, Jonathan, the last game wasn't an ideal one for your team. How do you put it behind you and take on the Super 8 stage?
Well, I think we came up against a very, very good side on their day, against Puran, who played a great knock. But what the great thing from that, I think, is that we now know, we've learned from that if a player gets going and how we can adapt and do better against the sides in the Super 8. So that other sides are going to have players of that caliber and who on their day can win matches like Puran did. So I think it's a good thing that it's happened. And so we know how to adapt, and we've learned from that lessons, and we're going to put that right starting tomorrow.
Gurbaz is in great form, but do you think that you are too much dependent on the opener and little fragile middle order? Do you think it's a concern? It's not a consistent middle order.
I think obviously in T20 cricket, openers and number 3 obviously are key positions. So I think for any team, they rely on the openers quite heavily. I think when you have a player like Gurbaz and the amount of talent and the way that he can take hold of games, I think any team would be reliant on him and want him to do well. So yes, he's one of our players, but there's 10 other people who are in good form and ready to go. So he's one of the leading run scorers, if not the leading run scorer. But that only counts. I'll only look at that at the end of the tournament. And if he still is, then I'll be very happy, because that means he's contributed and helped win us games. So, so at the moment he's in good form, and hopefully that continues for the rest of the World Cup.
4 night games in the group phase, and now you have a 10:30 start. Do you have to do anything different at all to adjust to the 10:30 start?
No, I think day games actually suit us better. So we're quite excited to play India in a day game. Obviously, they're a very, very good side on their day. Obviously, we're one of the favourites, and with being favourites, obviously, is added pressure for India, and hopefully we can come in, obviously perceived as underdogs, but in my mind, very much not underdogs, and fully prepared and ready for the battle that confronts us tomorrow. I'm very excited about. Well done. Thank you very much.